Welcome back. I'm Linda Kincaid at the CNN Center. You're watching Connect the World. Good to have you with us. I want to return to our breaking news this hour. And U.S. basketball star Brittney Griner now on her way home after arriving in Abu Dhabi from Moscow. Both the UAE and Saudi Arabia mediated to secure her release from Russia in exchange for Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout. Standing beside Griner's wife, U.S. President Joe Biden said he's spoken to Griner and that Griner will be home as soon as possible. We are covering this from all sides. Former CNN Moscow bureau chief Jill Doherty is in Washington, while our international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson has perspective from London. Good to have you both with us. I want to start with you, Nick, because this negotiation required several countries. The actual trade, the prisoner exchange, happened in Abu Dhabi. What can you tell us?
It's interesting, isn't it, that the interlocutors came from the Gulf. Both the Saudis and the Emiratis have put out joint statements saying that they were involved as mediators. They're very grateful and very happy with the success of their mediation. In fact, the prisoner swap, the final prisoner swap, took place actually in the UAE. The president of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, he met with President Putin back in October. We're told that this possible prisoner exchange came up as part of that conversation. Indeed, just yesterday, Wednesday, we're told Mohammed bin Zayed had a phone call with President Putin, again, sort of moving the process along. It's not quite clear what role precisely Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia played in this, but he's being given credit for being involved. So mediation has played a role. It does seem that it's come as something that's politically valuable to President Biden to be able to show his bringing a prisoner home from a foreign country, specifically Russia. Brittney Griner, a very high-profile prisoner. And President Putin will have been very, very keenly aware of the value to President Biden of giving the opportunity, because he didn't have to make this prisoner exchange happen, of making this possible. And we do know that over the past few months, Putin has been trying to find a way out of the war in Ukraine on his terms that aren't acceptable to Ukrainians or the Americans. And he does see the United States as a key interlocutor to put pressure on Ukraine to end the war again on Russia's terms. Now, none of that's going to happen, but it's interesting in this whole big context that conversations between Moscow and Washington have been happening, not at senior levels maybe, perhaps only through mediators, but they have been happening and they are possible. And that does speak to sort of back-channel diplomacy at this time of extreme tension.
Nick, just stand by for us, because I want to ask Jill about, Nick, you spoke about how this is politically valuable for Biden, but in terms of who has the upper hand in this prisoner swap, what does Putin get out of this? Because initially on the table, the U.S. had offered Bout in exchange for Griner and the other American, Paul Whelan. That deal was rejected. In the end, they swapped just a one-for-one deal. And they're two prisoners, one of which, Brittney Griner, had a very, very minor charge in comparison to Viktor Bout, right?
Yeah, it's very different calculus on both sides. Because if you look at Biden, enormous political pressure, very human story, a basketball player now sent off to a prison camp, et cetera. So there was a lot of political pressure coming from the public. But if you look at Russia, I wouldn't say that there was very much public pressure, release Viktor Bout. He's been in prison for quite a while. He was sentenced to 25 years. But it's important to the Kremlin to get him back. Now, why? Well, you could name a number of things. He denies this, but he is believed certainly, and was in prison because of this, to be an arms dealer, one of the biggest in the world, selling arms to terrorist organizations, et cetera. He was also believed, and he denies this, that he was somehow connected to intelligence and security services in Russia. So you'd have to say that the value to the Kremlin, again, was not big public swell for releasing him, but to get him back for their own purposes. And I really do think we have to look at the circumstances right now. A war in Ukraine, in which weapons supplies, etc., are very, very important. We don't know whether Victor Bout still has the connections that he had or allegedly had years ago, but he is apparently very important to the Kremlin. And I was noting today that this morning, the Kremlin, I should say the foreign ministry was saying this was a diplomatic victory. We really, really worked hard, but they never mentioned Victor Bout's alleged, arms dealing. They talk about his health, bringing him back, things like that. But it's again, a very different calculus on both sides.
And in recent months, we were talking about the conditions that Brittney Griner was facing. What does she leave behind, Jill? Because most recently she was sent to a penal colony.
Yeah, really harsh conditions. I mean, I was thinking of, here's a basketball player, very, very tall, in fantastic shape. And that has to be maintained every single day. There she was in a work camp in a remote area of Russia, really horrible Spartan conditions, allowed to exercise, so-called walk in the yard for about an hour a day. That would be extremely difficult for a real, sports person who is in great shape. Not to mention her feeling, and she apparently talked about this to her team over there, that she was beginning to lose hope that she'd ever be released. So there was a lot of, I would say, physical, but mainly psychological pressure against her.
And Nick, can I just go back to you? Because obviously the timing of this is interesting. While there's a war underway in Ukraine, relations between the US and Russia very poor. I'm sure the family of Paul Whelan, the other wrongfully detained American in Russia right now, is wondering if this offers them any hope at all that there could be a breakthrough in his case. What's your reading of the situation?
I think when we heard from Paul Whelan's brother a couple of hours ago, he was joyed by the news of the release of Brittney Griner. And they will certainly be aware that this would have been a huge opportunity to bring Paul back. And that just wasn't possible, as President Biden said. This does show that there can be prisoner exchanges, and undoubtedly they would take some hope in that. But they would also be wondering, what will it take, or who is it, or what is it that Russia's going to want in exchange for Paul Whelan? It's clear they believe that he is being held for more serious charges, the Russians do, for essentially being a spy, in their eyes, wrongfully accused. But I think for the family, they would perhaps look to what the Russians had originally said, that they wanted a 2-for-2 deal, and the second person in that lineup would be a convicted Russian murderer sitting in a German jail for which the US has no jurisdiction over. Certainly, you would expect their attention to turn towards that. Here, Paul Whelan's brother was saying that, it's a daily grind every day. You just get up. There's no magic in what we do, he said, to campaign for Paul's release, but it's just work, hard work. So you would imagine that they would also be talking, and have been talking, with German authorities about that possibility. But these must be terribly tough moments for Paul Whelan's family, and even for him, when he understands eventually, in the incarceration that he's in, what has happened, and this didn't get him freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Our thoughts are with the Whelan family, but good news for Brittney Griner's family. Nick Robertson, our international diplomatic editor, and our former Moscow bureau chief, Jill Doherty. Good to have you with us. Thank you. Well, still to come, Peru has a new president under less than ideal circumstances.
Como todos conocemos.
As we all know, there has been an attempted coup pushed by Mr. Pedro Castillo.
How the country's first female president is dealing with her predecessor when we come back.